Okay. Welcome everybody for the last panel of today. I'm very pleased to have this slot of the panel because it's the last before we have beer afterwards. So everybody is waiting for us to be finished. But before that, I'm very happy to welcome 4 of our panelists. We have 2 people on stage and 2 people online joining us for this discussion on regenerative materials. When I was asked, what kind of panel do you want to do? I thought, okay, I have done a panel on climate last year 2 times and on circularity. And one of the topics on which I have a lot of passion is soil. Soil, because we have a limited number of soil on our planet. And we want to produce more and more raw material fibers, materials coming from that. We want to produce food for more and more people, and we want to produce energy plants. And we are losing soil every minute due to climate crisis and climate activities. And that's why it is so important for me to have a look into what do we do with our soil? How can we make sure that we have regenerative materials from agriculture, which is not harming the whole soil on our planet more and more. And with that in mind, I thought this is a good idea or good topic for a panel here, bringing some solutions on the stage which are already here, which don't have to be invented new, but probably which nights would be good to have a bit of focus on. And today we have Niccy here with us. Niccy Kolchi is from RaddisCotton. They are working on regenerative cotton, and we know that cotton is a very important material in the textile industry in general, but also in the outdoor and performance textile area. Then we have on stage Matthias Böhme. He is an expert on sustainability solutions for many different raw materials. And today he will give us some insights on a project he is working on how to regenerate areas, agricultural areas which have been damaged by industrial cotton growers in the last centuries. And then we have 2 people online, which we hopefully can see now. Yeah, hello. We have Jeroen. He is from FLOCUS. FLOCUS is a fiber. It's a brand which is working with the Kapok fiber. Kapok is a plant-based fiber which is often blended with other cellulosic or protein fibers. And last but not least, we have Donna Chen from the New Zealand Merino company. And they are working on a regenerative program for farming, for sheep farming. And she is a specialist in all these transformation processes from for the regenerative agriculture. So very welcome to our 4 panelists here. Okay, starting here with Niccy. Niccy, can you tell us a bit more, or can you tell our audience a bit more on, if you're talking about regenerative cotton, what does that mean? What do you do at Raddis?
Well, I would like to quote Charles first, because regenerative cotton is often mixed with recycled cotton. So we should say cotton from regenerative sources.
Oh, sorry.
So just to get that out of each other. The cotton from regenerative agriculture, why is that different? That was the question. As we do it, we see it, the complete holistic system. It's a holistic system from food and fibers. We do not see the difference. For us, it's incredibly important that the farmers that we work with, they're not only getting the non-GMO cotton seeds, but they directly get as well the 9 intercrop, cover crop, and trap crops, so that they're really able to get a food and fiber garden as nature meant it to be. And out of that, they are able as well to create and to cook their own concoctions, to make their own fertilizers. That's why it's always very important to have a cow on the farm as well, because from their pee-pee and from their shit, it's incredibly important to create fertilizers. So it is a complete ecosystem which they can take care of themselves without paying a lot of money to all these big corporates for pesticides, herbicides, toxicides, etc.
Thank you. And then the next question to Matthias about this new, old, probably, system you are supporting in the textile supply chain with your partners, globally. It's a global project, isn't it?
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me to this panel discussion here. The project is called Candia apucinum. It's a plant originally cultivated in China, and it was suddenly found on degraded soil around the Aral Lake season, where previously intensive cotton growing has taken place, with the typical result of salty soil, which was no longer suitable for any agriculture. Strangely enough, this plant looks like nature's remedy to human sins being committed before. It grows a very widespread circular bale of roots into the ground, which can grab or absorb a high amount of natural water supply, or even if it's minimum rains. And it has fibers in its stem, which are about as short as short staple cotton in there.
So you're talking about the Aralsee. I guess all of us who ever looked into textiles, we know this dramatic pictures of this lake, which was pretty big a century ago, and it's very small. Where is the water coming from?
The plant was found there settling wildly in the beginning, and part of the project was to investigate how this plant really copes with the nature it's being settling in. The first cultivation trials were done with a very minimum of drip irrigation, and it was found that in latest year 3 the plant is growing without any human support anymore. And in contrary to cotton, the stems can be cut, and in the following season it grows wildly, freshly out of that cutted root area. It's still in a very early stage and has to be observed further, also across a period of several years, to find out how normal climatic changes which sort of influence they may have on the plant's growth.
And this plant has no problems with all the rest of chemicals which are in these areas? I guess there's a lot of contamination.
Yeah, obviously it handles it. The main, I'm not talking about maybe any chemicals, but the typical situation in this area is a salty ground with a very high salt content, and the plant lives with it and works nicely, builds up stems. And with the proper cultivation, it may offer, this is part of the project's target also, to find ways and means of growing so that the people living in that area can live on, work on this from the, cultivating the plant and selling the stems and maybe even generating fibers afterwards.
This program or this plant makes me hope that nature is much more clever than we are. Coming to the next panelist, Jeroen, you're a co-founder of FLOCUS, working with the Kapok fiber. And Kapok is something, I remember we talked about that probably 5 years ago here at Performance Days when you've been here on the stage. And since then, your work is growing rapidly. And can you explain us a bit on what Kapok is and what you do at FLOCUS with the Kapok fiber?
Yeah, so Kapok is a tree, but it's also the name for the fruit and the name for the fiber. So just in case people want to see, so there is a fruit, and within the fruit there is fiber, and it grows like apples on trees. So this is where, from an agricultural point of view, it's extremely different and nature-driven, where the agricultural approach is very normal. It doesn't need pesticides, it doesn't need fertilizer, it doesn't need irrigation water. So it only thrives with what nature gives: sun, rain, and groundwater. And because it's a tree which provides a fruit, it can provide fruit for more than 100 years. It can be a lifetime of an income for a farmer. So the tree is very good for intercropping, and even if you don't do it, it's always biodiverse. And this is where the whole system of scaling this on an agricultural method is much healthier, and its Kapok tree stores between 400 to 800 kilo of carbon per year. So it's really a different agricultural model, and the fiber itself will provide a carbon offset at gate. So that is quite a different approach than most other materials, which still have some impact.
So where does this tree grow? Is it in our areas or is it far away?
It grows in tropical and subtropical countries, so more or less around the equator. We work from Indonesia because over 150 years ago there was an infrastructure for providing fiber around the world. And since 1940, when polyester came along, Kapok was more or less became a forgotten fiber. And I hope now it's slowly time to turn it around, and where it actually is replacing synthetics or some natural fibers and animal fibers.
Thank you. And now turning to the protein fibers, to wool. Donna, I heard about the ZQRX program a few times before from your colleagues, and now I'm very happy to have you here to explain to our audience what you do at New Zealand Merino with the ReGenerative program, and how does it work?
Lovely for joining. So I joined the New Zealand Merino company about 3.5 years ago to really explore the question, what does it mean to move beyond sustainability? And so this was really when the concept was starting to enter the mainstream with shows like Kiss the Ground on Netflix and movies like Biggest Little Farm. But essentially I lead the science and R&D that has enabled the development of the New Zealand Merino's regenerative wool sourcing program called ZQRX. And really ZQRX exists to kind of grow the pool of regenerative wool. So speaking to really the concept that farming has the potential to have net positive impact on the planet, and that we can consider this net positivity not just from a carbon sense, but more holistically across kind of environment, animals, and people.
So what does it mean more holistically, beyond carbon?
Yes, so it really is the regenerative agriculture speaks to kind of that net positivity across all the multitude of factors.
Okay, thank you very much. And continuing with Donna, you work with a lot of farmers. How do you manage working with big ones, with small ones? How do you take care about all their, the fact that, the social part of it, the fact that they can earn their money, that it's something which is fair, that it's transparent. It's so important for all of us to have transparent supply chains, traceable supply chains, otherwise we cannot communicate it to our audience. How do you manage that?
Yeah, I guess really a lot of credit goes to the New Zealand Merino company with their kind of strong history of connecting brands with the growers who supply them. This means that the growers that we work with are very well connected to kind of evolving consumer expectations. And so when we launched ZQRX about 3 years ago, I was in awe of the willingness of growers to really lean into and embrace the concept of regenerative agriculture, and we now have over kind of 500 growers signed up to ZQRX across New Zealand, South Africa and Australia. really the model that we work with is through kind of forward contract model. So brands are able to kind of recognize and reward growers for the efforts that they are making on farm, and to support them through kind of more stable pricing, so that they can kind of invest for the long term in terms of the changes that they are wanting to support.
And changing from an old system, from a former system to a regenerative system, how do you support farmers? Is it difficult to get them on board, or how do you manage that?
I think for us, yeah, firstly it is all about kind of mindset shift, and almost showing what is possible, what does great look like, and then starting to provide some of those tools and resources for them to get there. So in some cases this looks like more data and more information, and others it's more about just connecting them to kind of the what is possible. But also just to say that the farms that we are working with already have to meet kind of ZQ certification, so we already know that we're working with some of the best growers. So it is really about kind of how do we work with them for that continuous improvement beyond sustainability, and for them to kind of grow their curiosity about what the potential is on their farm, through kind of through the partnerships that we establish with kind of the service providers local to them.
So very important talking about partners and not about suppliers. That's something which is, it's an important habit or view to look into supply chains. Jeroen, how do you do that? You're working with the farmers. You already mentioned they can make a living from it. How is that set up? So the social part of such a material.
Let's say on the social side, we see we can provide farmers where the trees are already growing with an additional income. So there are farmers which have these trees already grown for 40 years, but there was not an offtake of this fruit. Now we are providing them an additional income for paying for that fruit. And then we are working on introducing safety conditions which were not there before. So, for example, on the harvesting side. And with our new processing technology, we will increase the demand for the material, and that will provide a new opportunity and a reason for them to grow more trees. So, it's creating new jobs. It's adding safety in the supply chain, and above all, what is important for farmers, of course, is to make an additional or a new income model, so they can spread their risk over the year to get a decent or even a better than decent income to make their daily lives work.
How long does it take for such a tree to have fruits, to harvest?
Yeah, very good question. Also related to the income. So depending on how you grow, it can be between 3 to 7 years. And within the model, we also suggest, like Niccy also just mentioned, what type of other crops can be grown in between, so that it can have a short-term income model from the intercropping. And with that, we also introduce, for example, bees, and bees help to pollinate, and better pollination means a higher income from the better yield. And they also get an additional byproduct, which is the Kapok honey, which is also a very nice honey and a good honey for your throat. So these are the combinations where farmers then can improve their income in working with a full regenerative system.
So this is a nice example for fostering biodiversity.
Exactly.
And have you ever worked with agroforest in that context?
Yeah, so actually that's where the direction, of course, is going to work on agroforestry, where you include different type of crops, whether it's legumes or even just herbs for cows or goats to do a silvopasture, to improve the income opportunity, especially on landscapes where the soil is poor and this tree can grow, and where the farmers maybe now mainly grow corn, they can then also add the trees to it, and that works very well. So we are working on not just building agroforestry, but also resilient landscapes where you can then apply a lot of land which is underutilized at the moment.
Yeah, very good example for the fact that biodiversity can help to have healthier soil and more regenerative systems. Niccy, coming to the social part, cotton, we know that it's a fiber which is a lot of power needed. How do you make sure that all the social topics are covered?
Well, it is maybe known that 80% of the agricultural work in India is done by women. Unfortunately, they don't have a voice. They are not allowed to have any land. And where we are very cautious about is that we train those women to get them really confident, and that they are going to be the leaders of the pocket money, because then they think about their children, they think of tomorrow, and they think about how to grow the farm itself and not on the pleasures of that today. So yes, we are really taking care that the leading lady of the family and of the farm is getting a lot of self-consciousness to really do it herself. Which is important because as well her children needs to see the future in the farm. Until now, we do see a lot of young people going to the cities, but we need the farmers. For us, the farmers are really our land stewards. And I invite Jeroen because we really want to have his kapok trees as well around the farms, because this generates so much more value as just the fiber. And I don't think that is something we really are aware of. All the additional values, increase of biodiversity, healthy soil, everything starts with healthy soil, a better water retention, everything. So rethink your own value chain, please, because you can do very good things within your own value chain instead of offsetting. Thank you.
Another spoke for the holistic management and for the holistic view. That's very important. And sustainability is not only ecological part, it's also the social part. Of course, it's also the financial part, which is very important. And we all want to make money in a way, but we want to do it in a way which is healthy for our planet. Matthias, the social question on such a new project, a new material, born with the observation that nature can help itself. How do you manage that?
It's the project is still in its very early stage, so there's no planning and no structure to go a path like we just heard from Niccy here. But it's still at present it's under scientific surveillance from universities in those countries, and which structures will be put in place afterwards is presently not the part of our project. But of course we hope that it will develop into possibly agro-communities, and in the long run a target like we just heard before would be really fantastic to have, but it's a little bit too early to look into that. If the cultivation will show promising results also in year 3 and 4, yes, then we can think about such structures.
And is this area around the Aral Lake, is that fully in the target, or is it something like just a small portion?
It could basically cover the whole area, but this would mean monoculture again. So we have to be very careful what to recommend and what kind of crop rotation may work. At present, nothing else is growing there. So this is the biggest question of all. So we start really very much from the beginning. Yeah, no?
So having his bees again to to accompany the plants.
The vast difficult or contrary to and causing difficulties is usually if it rains, the water fell or the rain fell in the falls in the mountains, so then a creek is running down into the lower areas, and due to the desertification over there, the rivers never reach the sea. So they somehow, somewhere, they stop flowing and nothing is continuing there. So we hope that with the recultivation of such a plant, also more rainfall and a more stable irrigation by nature will happen.
Thank you. So we have some examples also in other areas where recultivating forests, which is a bigger view, can help to change the microclimate. And microclimates will help us to have more healthy soil. In the more diverse microclimates help us to have more healthy soil in general. Looking into the collaboration, all of your projects are showing that it's important to collaborate with different players, with looking on the holistic view. That's the thing what makes me so excited about sustainability, that we are forced to collaborate with others. And talking about brands, how can you engage with companies, with brands who are looking for new materials, old materials, new solutions on the topics where we know that they are critical in the material sourcing?
Of course, when the project started, or after the first laboratory trials became promising, we contacted brands, potential investors, and found, fortunately, very nice support from an eco-garment brand and as well from an outdoor brand who said, yes, if you are ready, please partner up with us. We will support you. Like a letter of intent, you usually get signed in order to get a project like that started.
And that would be something to use the fiber which is coming out of this new plant. Yeah. Okay. And what about if brands are looking into cotton? There are tons of brands who use cotton. Is that something which is already available? How can you partner up with brands? How can your project help brands to make more responsible buying decisions?
Well, it's not a quick answer because we're not looking for brands who just want to make a buying decision, a collection, or looking for material for just this season. We are looking for brands who really understand it's the long-term perspective, who are eager to really get their own value chain improved. And then you say the collaborations external are important, but don't forget that we as well need the collaborations in the companies, because what I encounter, if I have one Raddis Rebel, for example, and yes, we are starting to work with a brand, then we are doing it differently. It's another timing, it's another way of working, and that means it has to be transported throughout all the silos at the moment which are in existing companies. It is buying, it is marketing, it is procurement, it is law, it is all these different departments. But we need them all because it is a very holistic view. What we offer brands is that if they are going to be in our network, it is at least a 3-year period, because we are going from regenerative agriculture to regenerative in conversion to organic agriculture. That's at least a 3-year period. If we connect you directly with the farmer, we are going to build a relationship. And that relationship, we can offer the brand a steady flow of his or cotton. But on the other hand, for the farmers, it's incredibly important to know that the cotton he is cultivating in this more difficult way, because he's transforming it, he already has a buyer for it. So it's not a one-time order. It is really a strategical decision and commitment to do good together.
Again, partnership and collaboration. Jeroen, Kapok, is that something which is used as a monomaterial? Is that something which is blended with other materials? How does brands work with your fiber?
Of course, it depends on what product it goes. If we talk about sportswear, as like the performance is focusing, we blend it with natural fibers in yarn blends, or also recycled polyester for certain more sportswear or even uniform related products. In insulations, we do both natural and synthetic, depending on what the requirement is. So yes, currently we cannot do a 100%, but it's only a blend. So yeah, we work on tailor-made solutions with customers, and that brings really an opportunity to create more function and play with the different properties of the fiber, and also consider what is really the product and the function of the product the customer is looking for. And Kapok therefore provides a really versatile, interesting solution in some of these blends, which other fibers cannot provide. So that is where we see really Kapok standing out. Again, in some cases replace synthetics, in other cases replace down, depending on what the customer is looking for.
Okay, coming back to Donna. Wool. If brands are looking for wool, how can they know where the wool is coming from? The wool doesn't tell a story itself. So how do you collaborate with brands? How can brands support your program?
Yeah, so I'd mirror some of the sentiment that Niccy spoke of before, which is that we are seeking kind of long-term relationships with our brands and our growers who are philosophically aligned with the kind of direction that we're heading. And so in terms of the grower side, it's a requirement for all ZQRX growers to first be certified to ZQ, meaning that they are already meeting kind of those kind of ethical wool standards. And so for the same for brands, I would kind of almost expect that ZQRX brands are first kind of have been on the journey with us through ZQ. So New Zealand Merino Company has the ZQ certification, which is the ethical sustainable wool sourcing program, and then ZQRX, which is the regenerative wool sourcing program. So brands can kind of preferentially source ZQ or ZQRX to kind of join that collective movement trying to accelerate kind of the regenerative shift on farm. And so this is only available via contract, either through kind of with the brand directly or through supply chain partners. So economic sustainability is also kind of baked in there for both the brand and the grower. And maybe just to add that if you are there in person, Sudvilla, one of our supply chain partners, is set up near the entrance, I believe. So you can kind of speak to them a bit more about ZQ and ZQRX.
Yeah.
May I add something? Because I see we are all used to the word supply chain. But I think if we talk about regenerative collaborations, we should talk about collaborative value networks, because it is a constant network of give and take and really bringing the thing further in the future. It's not a supply chain where it's just a seller and a buyer relationship.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so we have, on that aspect, we initiated a foundation last year where we started growing Kapok trees, where some of our customers using our products, they donate to the foundation, which plant trees on a nursery. And that nursery is then giving those trees for free to communities. And that's the way how we also involve our customer in actually planting Kapok trees, which then eventually gives them a new income model for the farmer and fiber for those brands. So we see also a step forward, like other people in the panel say here, is that yes, a long-term vision is necessary to make a change, and with that we even would invite brands to say, hey, join us in making those commercial agroforests based on Kapok tree with what other solutions with silver pasture or even cotton or other products in between. Because yeah, it's a change which is necessary. and it takes time to convince farmers to change, because they're so used to the old model that they need a long-term vision from not only us but also from brands, which are seeing that only with convincing those buyers and giving them some safety of an income, that will make really a change.
And you have long-term contracts with the farmers for them to be on the safe side, to be convinced that it's a good effort to go into the new way?
Exactly. So we make off-take contracts, and then that's where they have some confidence that they are not growing this tree for nothing. They are growing this tree with the aim for an income. And this is where we also help them to improve their income from intercropping, bees, etc. So, and therefore the collaborations are interesting to provide not only a solution for the crop we are, as FLOCUS, are focusing on, but also for the intercrop. So again, safety of income and confidence is really an important factor to make a change happen faster. And that's where I do think brands can help.
Yeah, and the same question also is going back to Donna. I heard once that you have also long-term contracts with the farmers, and if we are talking, or we are thinking about social topics and supply chains and value chains, we often think about the people who are knitting or sewing our garments, but there are so many other people who is important to have a look to from a social side, who are helping our materials to end up here at our desks in our markets. So Donna, what about the contracts with the farmers in the ZURIX program?
Yeah, so as I said, only available via contracts. We have a history of kind of long-term forward contracts, which some kind of are up to kind of 10 years in advance, meaning that they have that kind of stability to invest into the projects on farm, and the ability to kind of think in the long run and not just react, I guess, to the current situation. So, and I guess to add that it is kind of a sustainable pricing model for both sides. So it is also the other, not just the growers, but also the buyers of it, who need that stability from the kind of volatility of commodity markets as well.
Yeah, and for those who are working with brands, 10 years is something which is, it's quite a time for an industry which is looking into reports every quarter year, and having, for me, it sounds very good to have more and more long-term contracts in our supply partners, because on the short term we cannot change things. Coming back to our audience, we have audience which is from all part of the production chain, the value chain. If you have a wish to the audience or to the partners in the textile business, what would it be? How can the how can brands, how can supply partners help to make to support your project? Starting with Donna.
Honestly, I think it would be, firstly, do not lose hope. Regeneration presents our industry with a pathway forward, and I think if we all kind of lean into and join that journey, then we can kind of be the ones to shift the whole industry forward.
Okay, same question to Jeroen.
Yeah, I think it's giving some trust and diving a little bit deeper into, let's say, in this panel, each of the product we are offering, because also from our side we have already proven products in the market. We are replacing synthetics, we are replacing other raw materials with a higher impact, so that means that I'm quite sure that in any of the collections of the audience there will be a product where we could fit in. And we don't have to fit it in all products, even if we just start with one that already changes a little bit of the demand, and that demand will turn into creating a lower impact, planting more trees, more confidence. And if we all, let's say, all the brands do a little bit, then that already helps. And I guess that's the same for the my partners in this panel.
Niccy.
Well, my first wish to all of you is please listen tomorrow at 5 o'clock at the same time here, because then I will show you a few examples of people, of brands who are already doing it. But not only how they do it, but as well I will talk about the hurdles. And I would love to hear your comments where you see hurdles. Because as we are here, we are learning day by day. And it is something we have to co-create. It is new. And therefore, even your doubts are very valuable for us. If you have questions right now as well, please go ahead and please listen tomorrow also. Thank you.
Yeah, be courageous would be a request, and if you're courageous, take this courage and contact us and let us work on common projects, whether it's specifically on that one I'm representing here now, or on other change management products. And something I read the other day in the paper about the big economic crisis in the 1930s. The American president of those days, Roosevelt, put up in several speeches something which may fit also into perfectly to our times. Said, the only thing you have to be afraid of is your own anxiousness. So drop it. Let's work for a better future in this case, and let's work together.
Thank you. But last but not least, before we close, everybody would ask for what is the price for this new solutions? Is it not even more expensive? How can we convince our customers to buy this kind of extra effort? I guess you're in a very early stage. I guess it is difficult to talk about pricing if I'm fair.
For me, no, very easy.
Okay.
Now, I guess for yarn spinning, we are currently at a level of, let's say, 2.50, so it's higher than spinning for regular cotton, but lower than organic cotton. We do see in the future with improving the supply chains to more, let's say, dense forest of kapok trees rather than spread out, that there is a potential to improve some of these costs. So. I think that the price level of kapok is not the hurdle to be absorbed in the textile supply chain.
And that leaves me. Well, our cotton is not a hurdle as well, because the good thing is, as long as we are really co-creating, collaborating, and we have that long-term perspective, we can really work with the farmer also. And we can create a bandwidth in which you as well can plan the price. And we all know that the commodity cotton in the last 2-3 years are up and down and up and down, and nobody can really work with that. So yes, I think we can offer a system in which we can all plan very well. And then, of course, everybody wants to know the real price. At this moment, last year we were even under conventional cotton, and this year we are a little bit less as organic cotton.
And having a fixed price with long-term contracts also helps brands to calculate prices for the future.
Well, not a fix, a bandwidth.
Okay, at least a bit of a range. Yeah. And about wool?
Yeah, so I guess talking before about kind of sustainable pricing, and we are in this for the long haul, so we need something that will work for both ends of the value network. And so, yeah, long-term contracts, again, a bandwidth similar to the cotton space. But yes, it is at a premium to kind of the long-term average and what you'd expect there. These growers are doing, more on farm, and we need to support that transition. So.
You are invited to join the happy hour sponsored by Release at ReGenerative with music and free instant snacks starting at 6 p.m.
Okay, thank you for the announcement of the happy hour. We have one last comment from Matthias, and then I would open for your questions. We have another 5 or 10 minutes left, so there is enough space for your questions to our audience.
Though in this project we can't really say anything about future pricing. But of course, I would like to draw the attention to value instead of price. If there's a value to the community over there in those countries, if it's a value for the processing chain, and if it's a value for the final consumer, then price should have a lesser importance. And drawing the attention on the value, I think, is a key point to get away also from these naughty price negotiations.
Thank you. So we have another few minutes for your questions, if there are any. And we love questions.
Yes, we do.
I have a question for Donna. I am interested because your product specifically is not grown from the ground, but from animals. So what does a regenerative approach to that look like compared to some of the other projects?
Yeah, so essentially it really is very similar. So natural materials such as wool are grown still by nature, and I guess when nature is thriving, then kind of the carbon cycle is working, water cycle, nutrient cycle, but the only, I guess, added element is kind of animals as part of that system. So within kind of improving, say, the soil and growing healthy soil, animals can play a part both in producing kind of biological inputs in terms of, fertilizer in their dung, and also helping to kind of reintegrate nutrients back into the soil through their stomping. So they're kind of part of that kind of healthy soil cycle.
Thank you, Donna. Any other questions?
Am I allowed to add to that last point? Animals also with their hooves are actually opening the ground for irrigation. And as we know, flooding is now a very common problem. So although we have the soil sponge, that's why we're using mixed farming. Two go hand in hand. I've got some virtual questions, but I'm happy to take questions from the audience. Beware of this one. This is the technical editor at World Sports Activewear.
Thank you, Charles. I'm curious about the new fiber, Matthias. It'll be a cellulosic, I suppose, but if it's a short fiber, will it be anything similar to Kapok?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's we see it in future possibly as a perfect addition to cotton, possibly viscose. So far, the industrial trials have shown that in on laboratory basis, metric count 50 in open-end spinning could be obtained by 100%, and from the very latest crop and improved plants, metric count 20 on ring-spun cotton system could have been done. But of course, the price and the availability of fiber may restrict the use to possibly 80-20 blends with cotton in the near future, and maybe in a couple of years going up to 50-50.
Thank you.
We have 3 virtual questions. So I'm going to read out all 3 virtual questions, and then you can pick which ones of them you want to answer. So firstly, from Isabella, fantastic technology. Do you have a database of already tested textiles? For instance, cotton, silk, polyester. Second question, does regenerative fashion differ from regenerative agriculture? So Niccy, this sounds like what you've answered already. What about regenerative textiles? And the third question, what standards or regulations would make the adoption of regenerative agriculture easier for everyone involved? So you've got a question there on the technology database. You've got a question about the difference between regenerative fashion and regenerative agriculture, and you've got one about what standards. Jeroen, we're not letting you out of this as well. So all 4 of you would like to hear answers.
Well, if I may start, especially about the standards. Regenerative agriculture is incredibly context-based. It's all about where it is, how the soil is there, what kind of weather conditions are there. So it's not that easy to have a standard for everybody. Yes, you have a frame, and there are things are developing, but you always need to really look at the context on the place where it is. And the other question, regenerative fashion, I don't hope regenerative will be in fashion. Like sustainability, regenerative companies, regenerative consultancy, regenerative whatever. For me, regenerative means you give back more than you take from it. And that's a very short sentence, and that's everything holistic in there. Regenerative fashion, I think it's meant to be recycled fashion, and that's absolutely not what we're talking about.
Yeah, I can only support what you said. For our project, it's far too early to think about it, as it is the origin or the idea of the project was just observing nature for the moment and how it continues. But regenerative in future, possibly another close study to the environment and the options, what to do really there. And I can only support you also in the question of standards. Standards can be very, very useful, but standards can also be difficult if they're not accommodating to the specific conditions in growing areas.
Any of our online participants?
Yeah.
Yes. Donna, you
So
go
as-
first.
Thank you. I was just going to say, for me, regenerative in the holistic sense, I believe can be applied to anything. So if we think about, I guess, ourselves as individuals and consider kind of the difference between the concept of I am healthy versus I am thriving, and thinking about what it means to thrive individually, then as a society, and then as how we impact the natural environment. That is the journey, I guess, of regeneration, is that kind of doing more good than you are harm. And then on the side of standards, I'd say that we need the tools and the standards to be able to reflect the full picture and capture the benefits that regenerative unlocks. So for example, I guess, we have traditional LCAs that do well at capturing kind of the gross emissions, but maybe less well at the kind of on-farm removal opportunities, just to give one example.
Yeah, I think for us, where we've seen the challenge is really on the certifications, where the industry is very used to conventional standards, which in case of Kapok tree, I would say 89% does not match with how Kapok trees grow. So I do think for a lot of new materials, there are actually standards which do not help them to give the transparency and the completeness of data in the supply chain, where brands still hang on to those certifications. So I think that's a challenge. Embracing new models with old certifications is very hard. And that's something where I think the industry is slowly changing, but we are adopting a standard which is not from the textile industry, and that already makes it more difficult to introduce that standard to the textile industry. And within that standard, we have to adopt new practices because they are not used to our type of growing a tree and harvesting it. So that's I think something where standards, you will be seeing new standards or change new standards, because otherwise new materials can't fit into the old system. And as far as the impact, I think it's quite challenging to have a regenerative product at the end of life. There's so much to consider, as in location, transport, impact, durability, and collaborations are very much necessary. So long-term vision is necessary, and starting off, and I guess here as raw material providers, it's better using a healing material than a material which has an impact, and that's just a basic starting point. And from there, build up your product and make your decisions to provide a more regenerative product and supply chain.
So we are coming to the end of our panel. Collaboration was the key word. That's the one which I really would like to give to the audience. And if there are more questions coming up during the evening or tomorrow, Matthias is here with at the booth at Lavaland. So if you just pass by, you can ask him personally. Niccy is also here tomorrow for the panel and also running around. All the topics Donna was talking about. We have the booth of Südwolle here. They can also help with the contact if you need. And Jeroen, if there is a question to him, I'm here all the day tomorrow at the sustainability corner at the end of this long gangway. Just come pass by and ask me whatever is popping up into your mind in the meantime. So in that case, I would say thank you for your questions. Thank you for listening. Thanks to the panelists. It was a very interesting collaborative mix what we had here. And yeah, I have the pleasure to hand over to the beer. That's probably the best thing for the evening to do. Thank you very much.
Can we show appreciation for the panel, please? But especially for Anna, because you don't want to tell her what time in the morning it is in New Zealand at the moment. We've had Taiwan on conference today at 1 a.m. in the morning, and Anna's got out of bed at some stupid hour to join us. Thank you very much for being here. This brings it to a close, the presentation program. We start tomorrow morning at 9:30. We start with Anna. If you don't know Anna, Anna is a small business coach. She really gets purpose switched on. Worth being here, very lively, very enthusiastic, very accurate. She's full of lots of tips. If you've ever dreamt you're going to have your own range, listen to Anna and you will benefit from it. But we now all migrate towards the sound over there, and there's free beer. Do I need to say anything else? Thank you for coming.